Well, we're back again for our third round here. We've had the privilege of interviewing Sherry and Brittany, and man, just some amazing talent so far. And at this point, at our time together, I have the awesome privilege of bringing on a friend, an incredible businessman, an incredible husband and father and leader in the community, leader worldwide. And it's such an honor. Somebody I grew up with. I've known this gentleman for literally 30 years almost. It's hard to believe how old he is nowadays. So nonetheless, I have the awesome privilege of bringing on the great Mr. Chris Winton. Chris, you there?
How you doing, brother?
Did you hear how I emphasize how old you're getting?
How old I am? Yeah, I caught that.
Well, man, thank you so much for being willing to join us today. I know you are extremely busy. Chris excuse me, everyone. Chris serves as the Senior Vice President of Human Resources globally for FedEx Ground. So, Chris, I don't know, what's that, about a $40 billion, division or vertical of the FedEx core of companies. And so you are extremely busy with movement happening all over the world. So thank you for being willing to carve out this time during this time of day, during this incredibly busy season for you all.
Happy to be here, brother. Anytime you call, I'm showing up.
Well, man, look, your story is, you and I come from the same neighborhood, the same backgrounds. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. And one of the things I've always admired about you is really, man, how you have managed to maintain this level of humility. So as God continues to raise you up in the marketplace, and I say this in a positive sense, you've managed to continue to stay low, if you know what I mean. You've managed to stay humble. Talk a little bit about that leadership dynamic for you and how your faith and your personal story contributes to your humility as God continues to bless your growth in business and in the marketplace.
Man, sure thing. So, Anthony, the story is always told, as we talk about, I grew up broke. And I always say there was a difference between broke and poor. Both of my parents were in the house, and both of my parents are still living today, love them. But they were blue collar. So each had to work 2, 3 jobs to pay the bills and to make sure we had food on the table. Now, that food may have been hot dogs and pork and beans, which I still don't eat hot dogs and pork and beans to this day because that's all we ate as kids. But growing up broke and understanding, seeing them struggle, the story. I was in high school and hated seeing mom work 2 jobs. So I started to work 2 jobs in high school and my grades suffered. And the only way I was able to be afforded an opportunity was that senior year in high school when Inroads showed up. And of course, Anthony, you and I went through Inroads together, whose mission was to identify and develop young, talented minorities for future leadership. And I remember I didn't have the grades to get in, but they listened to my story and gave me a chance and made an exception that opened up the door. And I knew that was God that day saying, son, I'm going to create a path for you. And I still remember asking the Inroads rep, well, who's going to pay for this program you're going to put me through? Because I didn't have any money. And their response was, well, we have companies that will sponsor you to go through this program. And I said, well, who's that sponsoring company? And for me, it was FedEx. And so I started FedEx as an intern. And later, obviously, as the story's told, now Senior Vice President of Human Resources.
Yeah, I mean, super remarkable. And you're right. And oddly enough, on my last interview, which I know you may not have seen, I was talking about Chris Howe. And I don't even know if I told you this story, how much Inroads was a blessing for both of us, right? But I remember going to my sponsoring company was American President Lines. It was a third-party logistics company. And I was just telling a story of how on my first day, they put down the Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word workbooks, and they gave me a computer and a mouse, and I didn't know how to use a mouse, believe it or not. I had never used a mouse before. So my the sponsoring manager, Mike Reese was his name. He literally leaned over my shoulder, put his hand on my hand, and showed me how to navigate a mouse for the first time. I was 18 years old, had, freshman in college, learning how to navigate a mouse for the first time. I mean, unbelievable how somebody took a chance on us, right, and gave us a shot. And we have been able to, by the grace of God, take advantage of the opportunities that were handed to us, Chris, and leverage those to get to where we are. Talk a little bit about, when you think about FedEx, and the culture of FedEx, much of the talent that you all hire, are frontline, talent, and how does your personal story make an impact and make a difference on your leadership style and your ability to engage that frontline talent?
Yeah. Well, Anthony, as we've talked about quite often, FedEx's purpose and culture is all predicated on one belief, that if you put people first, they'll deliver an awesome service. And that's what makes us profitable. And so for me as a leader in my current role, where our workforce is majority blue collar, it reminded me of my own parents, because my parents started and used to work as package handlers for FedEx. So going into this role, I said, well, I never want to forget what it's like in the day and day life of our frontline team members. So when assuming this role, I went in undercover as a package handler. And I know everyone's seen the TV show and understand how that all works, but I didn't want in, there were no cameras, no fanfare, no audience. I literally told the assistant hub manager and the HR manager, just don't tell anyone who I am. I want to come in and I want to experience the truth of everyday life in this job. Put me with the frontline supervisors and walk away. And so entering that truck, unloading the truck as a package handler and recognizing what it was like to do it allowed me to walk through their shoes and even start to think to myself, what's on my mind and what do I want to see in terms of a value proposition that would make me want to stay with FedEx for 23 years like I have. And so that's been the foundation of my approach to the leadership style and never forgetting where we come from.
Man, and you have such a unique background in navigating, you started off on an IT track and really, based upon your work ethic and your capacity and potential, you had the ability to one day become, say, a chief, information officer or a chief technology officer, potentially at a major corporation. But God saw fit for you to pivot, and you saw fit, obviously, for you to pivot and take an HR track, which is, if anybody does their research, completely unorthodox, completely unconventional, doesn't usually happen. Talk a little bit about that pivot, Chris, and why that was so important for you, and how you felt like the voice of God was pushing you to make a shift and move more in the HR.
Sure thing. So at 18 years old, started college and decided IT was going to be my career. And, young, ambitious, and goal oriented, I said, I'm going to be the CIO, the Chief Information Officer of the company. And was moving up through the ranks in IT. And my last role in IT was director of our data centers, our global data centers, and was having fun in the role. But what I often tell people is the 28-year-old me was different than the 18-year-old me. And once I hit age 28, got married, started having kids, that's when God started to really reveal my purpose in life and what he created me to do. And that's when I started recognizing that purpose was to help people reach their full potential. And that I only got joy in my life when I was reaching and pulling somebody else up and helping them reach their full potential. So I was actually thinking at that time, at that age, then I'm not supposed to be in corporate America. And I was looking to go into nonprofit work full time, thinking that was what God called me to do. until someone in literally, I was in the cafeteria one day and another director in HR stopped me, and I'm still a director in IT. And he says, Chris, I think somewhere in your life you zigged when you were supposed to zag. Somehow you ended up in IT, but you're an HR guy at your heart. And that stuck with me because that morning I was praying about, am I supposed to transition out of corporate America and be into my purpose full time? And then exiting the cafeteria that day, another employee who used to work for me and had recently been promoted to manager and reflected on some of the advice and the mentoring that I had given him said, you're supposed to be on the third floor. And at that time in that building, the third floor was known as HR. So I knew then that was the confirmation from God to make a transition. And I literally walked into the VP of HR at the time and said, hey, let's just talk. What problems are you facing and how can I help? And interesting enough, as God always works it out, her number one challenge was finding IT talent. And I said, well, I think I can help there.
I can help with that. Wow, incredible.
So,
Incredible, man. And of course, you've had tremendous success. You've had a few promotions in a short stint of time since you've even been in HR, which again is remarkable because, you didn't even start in HR. There are people who are in HR in companies who haven't gotten promotions at the level in which you do. And so it really speaks to the passion, to your leadership, and to really how you take the bull by the horns and you dive in for growth and development. Speaking of that, man, talk a little bit about, not FedEx specifically, but just the economy at large. What do you see as some of the challenges with hiring in today's climate, as well as some of the advantages of hiring in today's climate? Because I know there are people who are watching who they're in positions of leadership and authority where they have the opportunity to bring talent on board. There's a great demand for talent, in many cases. Obviously some companies have suffered in the pandemic, but on the other hand, companies like you all have actually had, some tremendous growth in the midst of this pandemic. So what are some of the challenges you're seeing, just in the hiring environment and some of the great opportunities that are there?
sure. So this is probably one of the most unique times in the labor market that in my history for sure, because there is great challenge and there is tremendous opportunity right now. Our company is growing by leaps and bounds. And the challenge is when you look at the labor force and the demographics, you have a generation in the baby boomer generation that has been retiring in large numbers. And if you just think back 5, 6 years ago, they were the largest demographic in the workforce. So you have this large demographic of the workforce who, Anthony, are our parents that are now retiring. And if you think about it, their parents averaged 6 to 8 kids. So I don't know how big your family is, but my dad has 10 brothers and sisters, and my mom has 10 brothers and sisters. So I got a lot of cousins, but they only had 3 kids. So then it just becomes a math problem in terms of how much you have entering the workforce versus the number exiting the workforce. And so companies like us are dealing with that challenge, but here's the opportunity that it presents. It now forces all companies to go a step deeper. And this is why I get so passionate about this subject, because now you got to go meet the front line where they are. You got to go meet individuals where they are. And that's why second chance programs and all of those individuals in the community that didn't think they had a shot, that were told, go to school, make good grades, get your degree, so you can get a good white collar job that has the benefits, and that's the American dream. That traditional path that they were told that didn't fit them. Guess what? Now there's another path for you. You can start as a package handler, unloading a truck at FedEx, and then become the manager of the front line, the senior hub manager, or the senior vice president of human resources. Those stories are all throughout our company, and those opportunities are there right now. And many companies like us are not asking you to come in with a degree. We will meet you right where you are. And when I was doing that undercover experience, I met a young 20-year-old operations manager who went to college, and after the first semester found out that it just wasn't for him. So he dropped out and he started with us as a package handler. And within 6 months, had a good attitude, had that grit where he would just show up for work and was disciplined. And we promoted him to a package handler trainer. And then another 6 months later, he was a manager. And I was just talking with him. I said, hey, did you ever get an answer to that question? And he said, what question was that? What do you really want to do with your life? What do you really want to be? What is your purpose? And he said, no one's ever asked me that question.
Wow.
And as we got to talk, Anthony, you wouldn't believe what his actual desire was. Of course, it was IT.
Yeah. Wow.
And of course, God put us together in that moment. And he just wasn't aware that he could go from package handler to a developer at FedEx. And I said, well, let me show you how. Here's the pathway.
Wow. Wow. Love it. Man, one question before I get into, I want to talk a little bit about the book you've written, but one quick question about your faith and how, obviously you're not at your company proselytizing and, as we joke about beating people over the head with the Bible, but how does your faith play out, in the role you're in and the work you do on a daily basis?
Oh, I used to wonder how to do it. And then one morning in my prayer time, I heard these two words, just be. Sometimes we overthink what it means to be a Christian in corporate America or in the job. All you have to do is just be. Me talking with that young ops manager was nothing more than I just wanted to help him. And those opportunities are there every day for us. We just have to open our eyes and see them.
Absolutely. Love it. Man, let's pivot a little bit and talk about your book. I want you to introduce, the 4 principles, the title, why you wrote the book, et cetera, because I want people to get a little bit of a glimpse of the creative side of Chris. You have the IT side and the operational side of you, but there's a creative side of you and a leadership side of you that continues to blossom, and that's why you're successful in the role you're in, frankly. So talk a little bit about that for us.
Sure. So moving up in my career, starting from intern and essentially holding every level of position all the way up to senior vice president, there were always these moments in my career where I felt like I was up against a ceiling. Like I could see where I wanted to be, but I couldn't achieve it. And the more I would talk to different people, I could see that everyone was feeling like they were hitting these ceilings in their career and wanted to know how to break through. And I would get many requests for mentoring and advice. And when you're doing that, you share stories of your own experience. And the requests started to just grow to a point where I didn't have the time. There's only 24 hours in a day. So it was you that challenged me. Hey, bro, when you gonna just put it in a book? And I often say I'm slow, but I'm trainable. So I finally took the advice and really put those 4 principles together. And there were these 4 C's that I would often talk about when I was speaking. And then one morning I woke up and said, well, how do you shatter a glass ceiling? C4 is the way you do it. And so the book is C4 Leadership. And it really starts with asking you this question of, what do you want to be? Like, what is that ultimate destiny? What is the goal? I've often heard that people fail because they have not decided where you want to succeed. I'm going to say that again. People often fail simply because they haven't decided where to succeed. And so now once you decide, then there are these 4 C's. And that first C is now you can become a consumer of information. That idea of it's not what you know, it's who you know in today's world, it's not true.
Mm,
Not true. And I'm going to challenge that. I want you to think a bit differently and ask yourself this question: who needs what you know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Who needs what you know? And that's the whole idea of now I'm coming to serve. I'm networking and meeting people, but I'm coming to give, not just to receive.
Not right. That's
And
good.
so now you're a consumer of information, so you can know what am I consuming that I can give and offer to someone, then start to connect the dots. And that's that second C. So I consume the information, then I connect dots so that I can help solve problems.
Mm,
And then once you can solve that problem, there's that lost art of a skill, and that's that third C, to communicate in story form. We know Jesus taught in parables. Why? Because stories stick.
yep.
We remember the stories. And oftentimes stories invoke a feeling. And as Maya Angelou said, I may not always remember what you said, but I'll never forget how you
How you
made me
made me
feel.
feel. Absolutely.
And that's when you get to that final C, because you've consumed the right information, you've connected the dots on how to help someone solve a problem. You can communicate how in story form. Now you can coach them forward so that they can go achieve their goals and the calling for the God that God has on their life. So those are the four C's that I say when you put those together, they ignite your career.
And of course, that sounds simple to hear you explain it, but I challenge people who are out there, to really, if you can, invest in purchasing Chris's book because it really can help escalate your leadership. You've taken all your years of experience at FedEx, over 20 plus years of experience, ranking all the way up to senior vice president. And you have some very practical and tangible stories, if you will, that play out in the book. You tell your personal story, but you also bring a lot of stories to life. And I think, to your point on storytelling, I think for those who purchase the book, they can actually benefit from the stories and look at how they can apply those stories even to their personal lives, to their leadership, and to opportunities that stand before them. So, Chris, where can people find that book from you?
So the book is in all outlets. The audio book is on Amazon. So wherever you're most comfortable, feel free to go out there and get it. And you can also go to chriswinton.com and get more information about it there.
Yeah, and so what we're going to do is, we have over 5,000 people in our database. Over 1,000 people actually registered for this event. So one of the things we're going to do is this time with you will live in perpetuity on our website. We'll also push it out to our database and make sure that people have an opportunity to see this. For those who are currently working and they're not able to join us right now, we're going to make sure they have an opportunity to view our time together. So we will, in fact, encourage those who want to go to the next level in their leadership to actually pick up a copy of your book, whether it's online or whether they're like me. I'm old school. I like to write and scribble in my books and still highlight and everything. So, of course, I have a personal copy. Our team has a copy of the book. And so there is some great, great, great content in C4 leadership. So I'm excited about that. Man, what's next for you? Now, you may not even just speak professionally. Maybe you can want to, maybe you do want to speak to FedEx, but tell us a little bit about what's next for Chris, because you have literally, your story is remarkable. Again, we come from similar backgrounds, and I've been able to watch. Man, we worked at a grocery store together. Literally, can you imagine that? Like, it's crazy. We worked at a grocery store together, lived in the same zip code, went to college together, it's just amazing. But to see where God has brought both of us from working in a grocery store, Cecil's grocery store in Memphis, Tennessee, to here, man, what could possibly be next for you in your career? And just life.
That's a good question. I literally was praying about this yesterday. Like, Lord, what is next?
Yep.
And with what's happening in the world today, and you start to watch the news and go, I got to get involved. I must assert myself. What I'm hearing in my spirit is a focus on helping people with mental health,
Yep.
and particularly in our community where there's that stigma that's on it.
Absolutely.
So I myself am going through counseling. so I can now experience and go through this, and then now step out there and push this issue forward. It's an opportunity in our society, and I think we can make a difference.
Yeah, man, and I have no shame in telling people I've spent thousands of dollars in therapy and counseling and coaching, et cetera. You and I didn't get to where we are. Our backgrounds and our environment was not conducive to get us to where we are today. And so we had to have some coaching and support and everything else you can imagine along the way to get here, because our environments didn't create this. It wasn't possible. I'm born to a teenage mom, in poverty. I mean, that environment doesn't create, the opportunities that you and I have before us. So, man, I applaud you for that. It's funny. I was just on the phone with, the story of The Blind Side and Michael Orr. He and I talked on Sunday evening for about an hour. And oddly enough, he's also tapping into this mental health space as well. And he's obviously from the same streets we're from. In fact, you may not know this, Michael actually used to sell newspapers right by Kirby at Kirby Parkway and Rains, oddly enough. And so for many people who've seen that movie, The Blind Side, somewhat off topic, but I encourage you to look up Michael Orr, the real Michael Orr in real life. He and I talked Sunday night, and he grew up in Memphis, right where we both, grew up as well. And so he has a remarkable story. And oddly enough, he's doing work to impact mental health as well through his foundation and some other things. So when we're offline, I'll make sure to circle back with you and share with you some of the work that he's doing, and there may be some opportunities to bridge the gap there. But man, super remarkable. Chris, tell us how we can stay in touch. Of course, I know how to get in touch with you, but but tell everybody around, who's watching us, who may be streaming this later on, how do they stay in touch with you? What platforms are you on social media wise? Obviously, they can go to chriswinton.com. chriswinton.com. They can come and find you. Obviously, they know that you work at FedEx, specifically FedEx Ground. But what platforms do you want people to visit in order to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, you can definitely follow me on LinkedIn, and you can get in touch with me directly at c4@chriswinton.com. Would love to talk with anyone who wants to go that step further. And I encourage you, if you know someone that is facing that point in their career where they feel like they're hitting that ceiling, reach out, give them the book. I think there are some stories that will really help inspire and understand that this journey that we're all on. I mean, it's not easy for any of us, but it's just grit, determination, and knowing the calling on your life that'll get you through it.
Absolutely, man. And I want to share publicly, we're honored to have you serve as a board member with WorkFaith. We have an incredible board, and you've been, our latest addition on the board. First board member outside of the city of Houston, by the way, but very strategic for those who are watching, because, Chris has such a passion for the work we do at WorkFaith. And so FedEx Ground specifically has some facilities around the Houston metro area. And so we're collaborating behind the scenes to look at ways that we can support the talent we serve on a daily basis with landing employment at FedEx. And so, Chris, thank you so much for being willing to dive in virtually, if you will, because you're obviously not in the city with us, but you saw opportunities to partner with us and collaborate specifically in Houston. And then obviously we thought about, as our work continues to scale and make an impact across the country and even across the globe, you'll be able to have a voice and speak into that work. So, man, we're incredibly grateful. I'm honored to have you as a brother and friend, and have known you for 30 years. We're cut from the same cloth. But man, I'm grateful for your leadership and the impact. You've impacted thousands and thousands of lives. And I appreciate the character you live with every day, brother. I appreciate you as a brother, as a husband, as a father. Man, we've done vacations together and everything. So I've seen you, the real you, even behind the scenes. And so I honor that and really respect and appreciate you for it, man.
I always look up to you, brother, because your energy, your grit, your determination to make the lives of other people better inspires me every morning, man. So appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you, man. Love you, man. We'll talk soon. God bless.
Okay. God bless you.